Now we need to have the conversation, and it's about the reshuffle of the leadership of the NDC in Parliament, or the minority in Parliament. And now the minority leader officially, newly appointed, is Kaysel Latto-Forson, Dr. Kaysel Latto-Forson, a former Deputy Finance Minister, and then a number of individuals also who have been made Deputy minority leaders as well as whips, etc. Now, as of now, you know that Emmanuel Amakofi-Boa, the Member of Parliament for Elembele, is there as Deputy Minority Leader. Kwame Agboja Adaklu, Member of Parliament, is now the Minority Chief Whip, and the first Deputy Whip goes to Ahmed Ibrahim, one of two who have been maintained, and then Comfort Doyo Gansa, second Deputy Whip. So these are the changes. We've had some swift reactions to these changes as well. First, we had an interaction with the chair or chairman for the opposition NDC, Johnson Esiedin Ketia. This is what he said.
The 2024 election is going to be fought around the economy. So the debate basically is going to be about the economy. You know it and I know it. And so if you are a party serious in fighting and winning elections, you must put your best foot forward so that you can win the debate. You can't just go and be telling people that the economy is in shambles, the economy is in shambles when you are not able to put your experts there to be able to communicate to Ghanaians how you do things better. So this is the point where we need our finance and economics people forward, and that is why we put them forward. We didn't just go picking people. It was a carefully thought through policy of selection that landed us where we are. But besides this, there are other advantages that came along with the selection. But the key reason is what I've given. The other advantages that have come along with the selection is that, take Kofi Amabua. His region, the Western region, for a long while has never been represented on our parliamentary front. And it's a key swing region. It's a determining factor in all our elections. So if you have opportunity of getting a lead figure there who can sway votes in your favor, and not just about swaying votes, but he has other reasons for his appointment, you go for it. So that's why Kofi Amabua comes in. You go to Central Region, we have never had anybody from Central Region on our parliamentary front desk. And luckily, we have Dr. Latto-Forson, whose other skill sets makes him the person of choice. So that has an added advantage of having representation of Central Region on the parliamentary front. And so, you know, by our constitution, we are expected to, as much as possible, to ensure regional spread and regional balance in our ways of doing things.
Well, we'll get some reactions from Tamale especially, but also go to Aswase and get the latest reaction from constituents this morning, particularly related to Dr. Muntaka. But we have in the studio Justice Abdullahi. He is a legal practitioner and also a lecturer with the Faculty of Law, the University of Professional Studies, Accra. Good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Roland.
Yeah.
It's great meeting you once.
Yeah, yes. But what did you make of the reactions from the members of Parliament themselves to the decision taken by the leadership of the NDC to change their leadership in Parliament?
Roland, so my honest opinion about what has happened is that the members of Parliament in question did not need any prior knowledge of the event leading to their rearrangement. However, out of respect out of respect, I thought that the NDC hierarchy would have at least consulted the members of parliament. Now, I say this because, Roland, we should understand that earlier in the morning, I spoke to some authorities whose opinion were that, you see, the members of parliament are individuals who did not even know each other until they met in parliament, even though they belong to the same political party. So they are akin to footballers. You assemble footballers from all around the world, and you do not consult them before you appoint a coach. You don't need their consent to appoint a coach for them. But it is just sometimes out of goodwill and sometimes out of maybe curiosity or good management practices to find their views as to any possible changes, either in the coaching style or the technical bench in general, just to know their views as to who they believe they could easily work with. But it is not a mandatory requirement to find out from them, because they themselves do not even know each other. So you sitting back as a technical person, in this particular case, as the political party in question, you know who can best lead your party in parliament and outside of parliament. You know who can serve the interest that you, and indeed the agenda that you seek to push across. And so it is just your responsibility to take such decisions. However, having had people leading you over a period of time, I think if you need to change them out of respect, just out of respect.
So to you, consultation was critical in the decision?
Would have been a better way to go than simply imposing people on others and surprising the leadership. I mean, some of whom were probably engaged in other leadership activities at the time they were dismissed.
Meaning that if they knew, they would
they probably would have known how to prepare themselves, sometimes even psyching themselves up, and indeed their family. Because all this surprise that has been sprung up on all of us, and the subsequent comments, negative comments and reactions as a result of the lack of consultation, it wouldn't have happened if indeed appropriate consultations have gone on. But that is not to say that it was a requirement to change them. I mean, to change the necessary changes that had been made. It is not a requirement, and indeed it is not out of any, I mean, the party does not, require any explanation. It does not need to give anybody an explanation as to why it takes a decision. But it's a political party. It has masses of people across the country and indeed across the globe. And so such a monumental change definitely needs to be explained to us so that we know the basis in changing these people that we have known to be doing so well. I'm asking myself, is it the case that Haruna and Muntaka were doing something so wrong? Is it the case that, they had done something so abysmally bad that they ought to be changed at this critical time? I mean, we are running into a next election that I thought these people had done so well and that they could steer the affairs of the party in parliament. In fact, they have actually done it half of the period in parliament. And beyond the few things that we all witnessed in the approval of the ministers of state that to many, indeed myself included, were wrongly done because we thought they could have done better. But unfortunately, nobody knows exactly what happened. Everything else is left with to conjecture. But beyond those issues that they got wrong, if those handicaps were the basis for changing them, I think it ought to have been done much earlier in time and not to wait up to this time. Because now it leaves a lot of question marks, which ought not to happen.
Okay. Now, let's go straight away to Ibrahim, and he is giving us the latest from the Aswase constituency. And Ibrahim Abubakar is right there, live on the stream. Ibrahim, what can you tell us you're picking up from the constituency? Please unmute yourself, Ibrahim.
Roland, what I'm saying that you cannot talk about the NDC in Ashanti region without mentioning the Asawasi constituency. In fact, not just Ashanti region alone, national, because of the volume of votes that the NDC usually gets within this constituency, around 50,000, 60,000 every election. So this is a constituency that is very, very important to the affairs of the NDC, and they have admitted to it. So for them to get a member of parliament who is the minority chief whip is something they all love. You know, for the past 2 weeks, if we can recall, we have done series of stories about tension within the NDC here in Asawasi, division at the camp of the MP, and also some executives, constituency executives of the party. Those things have been going on. But yesterday, one thing I observed from constituents here, including all the executives and also most of the constituents, they are all speaking in one voice. In fact, they have all expressed their disappointment in the leadership of the party for the decision that it has taken. It was saying, looking at the time, it was very, very crucial for the NDC to have maintained those people so that they walk into the 2024 election with them. But of course, the leadership of the party also have their reasons for making such changes. But this morning we are back at the constituency and we will be engaging a few of the constituents to find out what they make of this whole development and whether they are foreseeing anything kind of negative happening here, kind of affecting their fortunes here. I have with me Nasir Garden Boy. Kindly join me on TV3 and let's discuss. Good morning, you are live on TV3.
Good morning.
Yesterday, there was a major shakeup within the parliamentary leadership of the party. We've seen the likes of your MP, Muntaka Mubarak, going out for Kwame Abuja to come up in. What do you make of this decision by the party and as a constituency?
All right. The decision is very shocking, and to the people of Asawasi, we are indeed saddened by this decision of the National Executive Council of the NDC to change the leadership front of the NDC in Ghana's parliament. We are indeed saddened by this unfortunate incident.
And why are you sad? Because someone also as incompetent as Kwame Abuja is replacing the member of parliament for Asawasi.
We are saddened because of the kind of input the replaced member of parliament has been given to the people of Asawasi constituency when he was the minority chief. Honorable Muntaka has elevated the discourse of politics in Ghana to the extent that Asawasi has now become synonymous to political development. So to be the constituents of Asawasi constituency and NDC, our thought has always been that he is going to lead us with this kind of minority whip into 2024 general elections. But changing him and replacing him with somebody who is very great to the area of whip in Ghana's parliament, I think is uncalled for, and it is not sending a good signal that we are a minority party readying ourselves for power.
But Kwame Abuja has that experience. He has been competent in whatever he is doing. And don't you think we cannot leave that position to one man alone? Definitely there will be changes and the party has reasons for making those changes.
Yeah, like changes in politics, in contemporary politics is it's normal and very democratic. But some changes are good while some are detrimental. If you look at the projections and the movement of Ghana's politics, we did change NDC and John Dramani Mahama in 2016, brought in Akufo-Addo, and the worst economic.
Okay, Ibrahim, that way we have to go in. Well, so Ibrahim Abubakar giving us the latest from the Aswanse constituency. We also do have joining us on stream Dr. Rashid Draman, and he clearly has been studying Parliament over the period, leading his own think tank, looking at this comprehensively over this period. Dr. Rashid Draman, good morning to you.
Who has also
Good morning,
who
Roland.
wants to
Your
also
other
share
program is still
his
on.
thoughts
It's
on these
distracting me.
It's
changes?
distracting you. Okay,
Well, it came
Yes.
as a very
we'll
shock to
technically
us.
try and shut it down so
Things
that
are
you
not
can have
happy. Don't think
some good
any
feedback as far
constituency
as that is
executive member.
related. Is it better now, Dr. Rashid Rahman?
No, they are still talking. Okay,
They are
yeah.
still talking. They are still talking. Okay, so Dr. Rashid Rahman will be joining us. We'll also get the latest from before we end this conversation. Kamala Kluche, who's our lead parliamentary correspondent, and also open the phone lines. But we also have the WhatsApp numbers now activated, and you can also just give us your comments as far as this conversation is related. It's about the changes that have been made by the leadership of the opposition NDC for their own leaders in Parliament. And Dr. Rashid Rahman is Executive Director for the Africa Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Is it better now, Dr. Rashid Rahman?
Yes, I can hear you, Roland.
Okay.
It's better.
Did you see this coming? And is it part of a normal way of just undertaking changes of your leadership in Parliament?
No, I didn't see this coming at all. I think as well as, most of you, many Ghanaians were surprised by this. I think change is normal and it's part of, the processes of democratic renewal. But I completely disagree with those who hold the view that the caucus did not need to be consulted. I totally disagree with that, Roland. My reason for that is very simple. We have a very different parliament today.
By network, yeah.
Hello, Dr. Rashid Rahman, can you hear me? Okay, so let's go to Mutala Mohammed, and he also had an initial reaction to the decision, and then I will go back to Dr. Rashid Rahman.
Parliament are to be chosen or changed, there is the need to consult the caucus. How do you choose leaders for a group without consulting that group? Who told you that the group will be comfortable with the people you have chosen? Now, if the group were not to be comfortable with the people you have chosen, then that would be the beginning of a failure of that particular leadership.
Just Abdullah, I know that you clearly teach accountable governance and institutions within the realm of the public sector. And we're talking about a key arm of government, for example. And that's the main reason why we also brought you here, so that you add your voice to that conversation. In decision making as part of accountability in the structures of governance, how is it important for such decisions to be well communicated?
Well, so Roland, exactly why my position earlier, that even though it is not a mandatory requirement for consultations to be made, but it's imperative to do so, because it then allows all the parties involved to know the parameters with, and then indeed the basis for the decision being made. Indeed, that is the crux of any democratic governance. Okay. That is what you need for good governance. And so once you're able to establish that, you are easily able to avoid all these temptations.
Okay. And Dr. Rashid Rahman, if consultation was important, how should that have been made?
Well, Roland, I think it's very simple. You see, we are in the 8th parliament in which every single vote matters to these two political parties. The caucus is not a big. We are not saying that they should consult the whole membership of the NDC across the country. They have 136 or so members, and they have various platforms. They have the current leadership. I thought that at the very least they would have been done some favor, that's the leadership, by maybe having a meeting with them and informing them of the decision that is coming. It's not their decision. It's a decision of the party. If it is indeed so, then this is communicated to them and then perhaps through them to, all the caucus members. Because you see, you are putting up people who have to lead, and you are putting up people who, for instance, the whip must have the legitimacy, must have the support, must have the willingness of all members of his caucus to be whipped into line and to get to do what the party wants. At this critical moment, if you lose even one person, NDC will be in disarray on a number of issues that come before the House where every vote is important. And so for me, that is where I think those members from within the caucus who are arguing that they were not consulted, are right. Because look, we are talking democracy here, Roland. Even if nothing says in their rules, in the NDC rules, in the party rules, that it's a decision of the party. Democracy, the basis of democracy is participation and transparency and so on. And we are calling for our governments to be transparent. We are calling on our governments to include us in the decisions that are being made. Right now, the debt exchange program, you see what is going on. People are saying, why do you decide for us without consulting us? And we are seeing these things play out at the level of a political party that is waiting, to take the reins of government. So I think, on that score, if it's indeed true that there were no consultations, I think the party has done something that's not right.
There's a newspaper that says this is a coup in Parliament, to the point where this is a phrase of description of a decision that has been taken. How does that affect the channel of communication within a certain grouping, whether it's the minority or the majority? And this time is the minority. And how that affects how they are able to reflect the position of the party in Parliament in their workings?
So, yes, indeed, Roland. Yeah, this is really going to have a very serious impact if in fact the consultation did not take place, and if people are describing it as a coup, you are going to have a situation where today the single most important, I think, ingredient that the NDC needs going into the 2024 election is unity and consensus within its ranks, so that they project an image of a government that is in waiting, that Ghanaians can trust and hand over power to if they so wish when they go to the polls. Now, if we have a situation where all we see is chaos and disarray coming from within the ranks of the party in the House, then I think the leaders would have to think again and they will have to re-strategize. Because at the end of the day, I have told this to the various caucuses at different times, that, if you are a government in waiting, people measure you by what is happening in Parliament, not by what is happening at the party headquarters. Because what is happening in Parliament, the performance of a party in Parliament, is the yardstick by which people would measure whether the party can be trusted and can be given power. So that's why it's very important that they manage the caucus relations very well, to the extent that this thing doesn't blow up in their faces.
I have also in the studio Justice Abdullahi, legal practitioner and also a law lecturer with UPSA Law. And because you teach the workings within accountability, the governance institutions, and we're talking about the individuals who have been members of parliament, ministers of state, taking this decision at the party level. How does that affect what the institutions of accountability should be? And then also the influence or effect on party membership.
So, Roland, just before I say, I respond to that directly. You see, everything we are talking about within this space,
narrative,
has a lot to do with participatory decision-making processes.
Yeah.
So, by virtue of somebody not having a stake in the decision that was made, Not that his consent was not sought, but by virtue of the fact that he did not participate, he was not given the room to participate in this decision. You are likely to find the sort of revolt that are being described as coup and all of that. And taking into consideration the fact that we have equal numbers in parliament, it becomes very difficult to witness such revolt from within the same party. And once that is witnessed, you lose the chunk of your membership, who also, and in this particular case, talking about leaders who have huge following within their constituency, the Asawase and then Harunes constituency. So this is how it reflects, it resonates with the party at the local level. And automatically, these persons naturally would also feel the same betrayal that their leaders feel. And automatically, that would go against the political party in question. Some of these people you may not be able to recover, ultimately. You can never recover their trust and indeed their vote.
Yeah.
Others may stay with you because of their loyalty to the party, but some would automatically be on the wayside and you lose them. And this is how this directly affects the party at the local level, because they feel you've betrayed their leader. They feel betrayed themselves. Automatically, such persons would follow, some of them would follow where their leaders go, others will completely fall out. And numbers are important going into the next election. We have serious issues with our numbers because, for two main reasons. First, because the party in power is not doing so well. And so the only other rescue team is the government in waiting, as Dr. Rashid Dramani calls it, that's the NDC. And so any attempt to lose anything that causes a loss of a single vote automatically could impact the next election because this is our democracy really thrives on whoever is in power. Because once you are in power, you have the monetary resources and you have other media resources, unlike the party in opposition. And so you cannot stand that chance of losing a single vote because of a decision as simple as it is, as changing your leader.
Are you saying that there will be individuals, because of the level of voter constituency, that key individuals who have been removed from this position and how they relate to them, to the point that they could use that as benchmarks not to vote?
Absolutely. In fact, and if you remember, we witnessed that in the 2016 election, where the voter region caucus decided not to vote at all.
Well, true.
They decided not to vote. It's not the case that they are no longer NDC, but because they feel betrayed, because they feel left out, they would not want to go to the other side, but they will not vote for you either. And that is even more dangerous than even voting for the other side. And this is the ramifications that you stand to witness if consultations and participatory decision-making are not followed.
Okay. Dr. Rashid Draman, because you've been a big watcher of Parliament alongside Justice Abdullah, as well as all of you within that space, let's talk about perhaps the indicators of performance. We've had a leadership of the minority, for which at the beginning of this Parliament, they've made approvals which within the public space and within the media space also seem to have been questioned. Approvals of individuals as ministers of state who people might have perceived not to have acquitted themselves creditably. Approval of agreements, as well as decisions that maybe perhaps they were expected to take that they didn't take within the realm of what the public space of governance and discussion is. So is the indicator of performance a good benchmark to say they didn't do too well, and so there's a good justification for this decision that has been made?
Yeah, I think, Roland, I mean, that was the first test of holding the government to account, and the first test actually of gauging whether the 8th Parliament will live up to the expectations that we all have as Ghanaians, as one that was going to be up and doing when it came to the matter of oversight. The NDC caucus in Parliament failed on that score. I think that one we have made it very, very clear. And I have had even occasions to have conversations directly with, members of the caucus and so on. And I mean, we were not saying it. I think even their base was saying that. Granted, I mean, that happened. And I think even the National Executive Committee of the party has discussed this. If the statements that we read from the National Executive Committee, I mean, was anything to go by. I mean, they learned their lessons, they moved on. So that was in the first quarter of just at the beginning of this eighth parliament. Subsequently, I think what we have seen was a complete shift, from that failure to a situation where, I have seen many things that I haven't seen in the 20 or so years that I've been following this our parliament. For instance, let me just give you a few examples where I thought that, the caucus did quite well. And in fact, that's a translation of the leadership of the caucus. Budget making over the years, our parliament simply was a rubber stamp. In parliamentary development, Roland, there are three categories of parliaments when it comes to budget making and financial oversight. Those that have the power to make a budget, like you talk about the Nigerian House of Representatives, you talk about the US Congress, and so on and so forth. Mostly the presidential systems of government where there's a clear separation of powers between the executive and the legislature. Then you have budget influencing parliaments. And then the third category, the last at the bottom, is budget approving parliaments. And over the years, our parliament was in that category. Come the eighth parliament, I think we have seen through the work of the caucus and, of course, I mean, the advantage they had was mainly with the numbers and so on. But we have seen that our parliament is indeed one that can really reject a budget, one that can really cause the executive to go and reconsider budgetary propositions and so on and so forth. So I think for me, that's one indicator. Then the second, it's been a very long time since we've had a situation where a minister, an important one for that matter, the Minister for Finance, was censured. I mean, they were able to get the motion through, they were able to get, all the numbers and so on. Of course, the motion failed because of the constitutional arrangement of having 2/3 to get the motion passed. It's been a long time since we saw that kind of thing happen in our parliament. And there are many, many others. I mean, we saw the e-levy, the kind of spirited defense that the NDC caucus put up and so on. And so if we are talking about indicators of performance, at least on the basis of what we see play out on your screens and on the floor of the House, we cannot say that the leadership did not do quite well. Maybe there are other things that we don't know.
Okay.
If there are other political considerations and issues that we don't know about, I think that's okay. But on the basis of, trying to measure their performance based on the constitutional mandate that they have and based on what we play out on the floor, I will not give them a failing mark.
Okay. Justice Abdullahi, what are the implications of this?
In fact, go ahead.
On the membership in the House, as well as the party base.
So, just to add to what Dr. Dramani said, I think they've done, the leadership has done some what could work, except that one would have expected that they would do much better because of the numbers, the advantage of numbers. Of course, the exit of the Kipkus MP naturally affected the NDC's performance in Parliament, and of course they have allegations of underhand dealings against the caucus, and so maybe it probably may be the reason why we are seeing what we are seeing, but that may not be a basis to fail them, not at all. I think that this Parliament in itself could have done way better than it is currently doing. And so even though we may not feel them for what they've done, I think that they could have done better. I mean, given an average mark is okay compared to our previous parliaments that were simply rubber stamping parliament, did virtually nothing.
But this is better. This parliament is better.
Way better than
but could have done better.
But could have done way.
Okay. Now the effect.
So now the effect would be for me. I mean, it's my prediction that possibly from what watchers are seeing, we should be having a more strengthened parliament, which is should be the government in power having a minority in parliament. Because with what Ghanaians have seen, the electorate in general, it clearly appears that having a different party in parliament, I mean, with the majority in parliament, is way better than having the government in power with majority in parliament. And I say this because I actually predicted that was what we were going to happen. And indeed, I remember Dr. Rashid and myself were here prior to the inauguration of this parliament. And we jubilated for, in fact, some of us danced in your studios for the kind of parliament we are witnessing today, because we thought that we were going to have a magical parliament. It didn't happen that way. But I think this one has given us a clue, an insight into what could happen in future. And what could happen in future is what I'm predicting. That is the effect of the next parliament. It's likely to be an opposition-driven parliament. Now, that would give us value for money, because we would then have a proper monitoring mechanisms, a proper way of checking the excesses of the executive. And for Ghanaians, that would be the best thing to happen, because, I mean, we all know the rot that we witnessed. I mean, if you read the Auditor General's report,
yes,
I was hoping, for instance, that as the original intent of of setting up the Office of the Special Prosecution Office was, that the Auditor General would liaise with that office in the prosecution of corruption and other dealings. And if you read the report, it's such a bad report. It's such a bad narrative on our public sector financial management systems. In fact, almost every single item you see is in red marks. Every single item. There are procurement breaches of all kinds. There are the other side of complete indifference as to how monies are spent.
But the Auditor General, if you look at the constitutional article of 187, has a power to surcharge.
Indeed, he has. Except that if it is a breach, some of the recommendations I think were so unacceptable. Recommendations
were gross.
I mean, it's as if the Auditor General itself, that institution, was also in bed with government, because
you think it's just massaging.
I mean, it's so unacceptable, so unacceptable. And I expected a lot from the auditor. I mean, making recommendations for people to go back and reconstitute and seek prior approval. I mean, we come there.
Okay.
Possibly.
Okay. How would you?
But sorry.
How would you expect? So I asked the question about how this could have a certain ripple effect on the rest of the members, and then also on the membership. So my response to that was this, that it is likely to have this effect of revolt from within the membership. Okay. And I had said that earlier, so I thought, because I'd already answered that. Right. So if you have that kind of revolt, you cannot have a cooperation within the party. And I extended this to indicate that, indeed, that revolt goes sometimes beyond the House itself. It also goes to the extent of having the supporters of these MPs. Remember, they have core membership, core support base. These MPs have core support bases. Some of them even have the party executives at the constituency level as the core members, because they literally are the ones who finance the party at the constituency level. And so there are people who literally depend on these MPs for their livelihood. There are those who depend on them for their political future. And so such persons are likely to also revolt if chances are that other people, as I said, would also stay back from having any dealings with the political party in question. And that would naturally affect their votes at the ultimately, in coming the next election. And so it is something that we must be very careful with. And I think, as I commented earlier, the party, of course, the decision has already been taken, but the party still has an obligation to engage them at this moment to sort of bring all the sides together and find a better way of dealing with this onslaught, because it could affect the party potentially in the next election. Right. We'll go to Tamale. We'll have a link to Christopher gives us the latest from Tamale and get to see from the constituency, Tamale South, what the constituents of Haruna Idrisu think. But generally also, that could have implications on what they think they could either participate adequately or have some level of enthusiasm for the NDC in the upcoming elections in 2024. But in the meantime, please make sure that you give us more of your messages. And we already do have a line already made available for you. And we'll take you through some slides. But the number for our WhatsApp platform or console is 050-30-62445. And we'll put up a slide just to tell you in the current parliament, the leadership that we had until today. And we have for both sides, the majority and the minority, the speaker, Alban Bagbin, and then also the first deputy speaker, Joseph Osei Owusu, and then also the second deputy speaker being Andrew Esiama Amwakum, the majority leader, Oseche Mensah Bonsu, as we all know, deputy majority leader, Alexander Penyumakin, and then until this announcement, the minority leader being Haruna Idrisu, deputy minority leader James Kluche Avaji, and then also the chief whip for the majority, Frank Anodompre, the first majority chief whip, Lydia Al-Hassan, the second majority chief whip, Habib Idrisu, and for the minority, the chief whip being Dr. Mohammed Muntaka Mubarak, first minority chief whip, Ahmed Ibrahim, the second minority chief whip, Comfort Doyo Kujo Gansa. And it looks like the only survivors from this is Ahmed Ibrahim, and we have the only lady in the midst, Comfort Doyo Kujo Gansa. How do you expect that they will fare compared to the leadership of Haruna Idrisu?
Atoforsen and
the LMBL MP,
yes.
Emmanuel Makofibwa.
These are all 8-year-olds in Parliament. Indeed, I think Atoforsen is 4-year-old. Or no, I think, yeah, the same. And there was this guy, the chief whip.
Yeah, the
chief. They are in their second. Second.
Ahmed Ibrahim is in his
third.
Yes.
No. The chief whip. The chief whip. What's this guy's name? Kwame. Agboja.
Third term.
Rather?
Yes.
I thought it was in second term.
No.
I thought it was in second term.
No.
Voila. So clearly they have gained some experience from the 12 years, almost 12 years that they have been in office. So 10 years now. It's 2 more years to go. So clearly they might have learned a lot from the leadership of Haruna Idrisu and indeed other leaders in the past. I expect that whatever the base is the basis for removing Haruna and co. Would have been communicated to them, and I expect that they would be able to learn better from those mistakes or errors that occasioned the dismissal of Haruna and his team. And I do expect that they will bring spirited enthusiasm into the defense of the NDC and indeed in the prosecution of the case for the Ghanaian in particular, not for the NDC, because they are not there for the
because
for,
of the
for
state
the
of the economy and the difficulties that
we are the
government
ultimate
of the
beneficiaries, so they cannot be there simply to advance their private interest, but rather the interest of the Ghanaian. And if they're able to do that, I think we score them higher, and possibly they will justify the basis for bringing them there, because there's a huge responsibility, and I do expect that they recognize that going forward, because they are literally the leaders of the NDC at this moment, and whether in Parliament or outside of Parliament, because they carry the nation on their shoulder at this moment. And I expect them to recognize that fact. Once they recognize that fact, the monumental task put on their shoulders, I expect them to be able to live up to expectation, because it's a difficult task. As for Ama Kofibua and Atufos, and because they've been deputy ministers, I do not expect this to be any different from them, even though they are two different portfolios. If you remember, I think they were ministers in the past.
Yes.
So having been
Deputy
in those,
Finance and Energy.
exactly, having been in leadership positions within the ministerial level, I do expect them to bring those experiences, except that at this particular moment, a lot will be required of them. Negotiations, compromises, and indeed, at the same time, pushing forward their own agenda, the agenda of the Ghanaian and the agenda of the party. And so it is a more difficult position at this moment as compared to being in the executive position where you with so much power and be able to do as you please. This time is no longer like that. This is a completely different field. It's a minefield that if you are not careful, you end up being swallowed by the earth. And so I expect them to be able to do so much more, taking all these variables into consideration and be able to get for the Ghanaian what we deserve.
Now, how should they work closely with Haruna Idrisu as well as Muntaka Mubarak?
At this moment, that's very difficult, which is exactly why I said earlier that I expect the party leadership to engage all sides to find a nice way of bringing some sort of unity between them. Because at this moment, take it or leave it, Haruna and his team would be better, and they are better. Their constituents are better, their supporters are better, and indeed their families would be better at this moment. And it takes a lot of courage, humility, and indeed some amount of some modicum of recognition of the fight ahead to be able to put your private and individual differences aside and be able to forge in some form of unity and fight for the common good. And the recognition of that common good is a key factor, which is why the party leadership would have to engage them at this moment, explain to them that this is not personal. This is for our collective benefit, our collective, and indeed the benefit of the Ghanaian. And once this kind of communication goes down well, I have absolutely no doubt that Haruna and the team would appreciate the need in giving their ultimate support to the new leadership and be able to get for us what we deserve.
Now, there's a question I want to ask before we go for break, which is about, there's always the argument on the part of the minority that the government of the day, led by Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, needed to undertake a reshuffle.
Surely.
So let's say this is also a reshuffle in disguise for shadow ministers. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, there may not be anything wrong with that. Indeed, if the president indeed wants to reshuffle, he doesn't require any explanation. There's no legal requirement for him to explain anything. And it's the same thing with the party, except that when you're taking some of these decisions, as against reshuffle by the executive, where power resides in only one person, here the power is diffused in a way. And so taking these kind of decisions, particularly at a critical moment like this, would definitely require some amount of discussion.
So it is the time that's the problem.
The timing is a problem. The timing is a problem. And second, the performance is also an issue. I think most Ghanaians would credit Haruna and the team creditably for how they've steered the affairs of the party, particularly how they handled the Ken and Jua Safo sagas. I think Ghanaians, and indeed all and then the absentee MPs, you'd see some different kind of MPs, some different kind of leadership qualities being brought to bear. You see some different attitude in the House of Parliament as compared to the previous ones. In the past Parliament, you probably would never even hear of any of these.
Yeah.
Everybody would just simply close over it and then we move on. But this time, you see everybody being questioned. And for me, it is more important. It may not be as good as we expected, but we have seen some amount of leadership being exhibited by the parties, by the leadership of Haruna Idrisu. And so it is the reason why if there is a need to change, everybody would expect that some explanation be given. Some amount of explanation as to why. But
than what is being given.
Unfortunately, we are not even getting anything. What
Well, there's
Chairman
been-
Mosquito is
yeah,
saying,
is
really,
about economic, regional, and something.
I do not think that. I mean, we are not
Suffices
kids.
enough.
We are not
Right,
kids. I mean,
right.
we could give us something better.
You really have exhibited traits of being a close watcher of the governance system in Parliament, actually, creditably. I have to say that Justice Abdullahi, he is a legal practitioner, but also teaches the law with the Faculty of Law, UPSA, and so he's still with us. We will take a break. When we come back, we will invite you to join the conversation. We'll have at least some 5 minutes and get you onto the phone lines, open the phone lines for you to also share your thoughts on the changes announced by the leadership of the opposition NDC to the leadership of the minority in Parliament. And then also we'll talk about a small subject that's getting a lot of traction over the last 24 hours. And this one about domestic relationships and talking about a case in point of side chicks and if they decide to take a case on in court, if they really do have a case. We're taking a break. When we come back, the phone lines open for you, and then that lingering issue about a domestic relationship, the issue of side chicks and the concerns they have in court.